Hey, it's Carra Riley, and welcome all over the world. I'm the founder of the Cosmic Cow Pie series of books, workbooks, workshops, and events. And we help people reduce stress and create balance in their life. So welcome to this Zoom meeting. This format will only include seeing the speakers, and the guests feel free to type questions into the chat room, and we'll get to you at the end with any questions that you might have. At this time, we're going to be dealing with the CCS, COVID Crisis Syndrome. And it has touched everybody in so many different ways, but we really need to have some fun with this. And this is one of the cosmic characters. He's all masked up, and we're going to be discussing some of the things that have really been a hot button and it created a lot of anxiety for people in trying to go forward with their lives. We do have to know our monkey, and we have to know what it is we need to do to navigate all the cow pies that are thrown at us daily in this new COVID crisis and the pandemic. So some of the things that we'll be talking about, it's taking us longer to complete tasks. We can't stay on track, motivated to think about next week. We can't even think about, no way that can you think about next year. Feeling anxious because of the unknown, separation anxiety from family members and friends, physical issues and discomfort. There's just a lot of cow pies that we're trying to navigate. So today I am absolutely delighted to have two international speakers, Joeann from Tucson, Arizona, and Kit Cummings from Marietta, Georgia, and my daughter Shae Riley back from a one-year discipleship in Eureka, California. So they're each coming from different perspectives to help us with the chaotic effect that COVID-19 has had on our lives. So I'm going to introduce each of the speakers, and then you'll be on the big screen and everyone will be looking at you so that we know who you are and what you're doing. And so the first introduction here is to Kit Cummings, the founder of the Power of Peace Project, and he's currently in Marietta, Georgia. I met Kit in 2010 in the Flagstaff, Arizona, where he was speaking to the Northern Arizona Real Estate Group on attitude. His dynamic method of speaking and sharing of experiences moved me to action to connect with this man. And I've seen him move from the GQ suit and leather loafers to tattoos, tennis shoes, and t-shirts. And today he has a nice shirt on. I'm like, wow, is he gonna wear that black t-shirt? So anyway, you look really nice here. So, but you use the experiences that you've gained to resolve conflict in some of the most dangerous areas of the world. And I think this is important for our viewers to know, because you apply the principles that you share to bring about change in prisons, schools, corporations, and the faith-based community. Kit has journeyed on tours through Africa, Asia, Europe, Latin America, and negotiated peace between some of the most notorious gangs inside the US prison system. Kit has authored 5 books, including the award-winning Peace Behind the Wire, A Nonviolent Resolution, which has been endorsed by the Dr. Martin Luther King family. And Kit has just finished speaking at a community event, literally minutes ago. He called in the car trying to do the green room thing. It was like, Joe, wait till you get there. And I'm going to let him fill you in on how COVID has touched his life and what he's doing to stay on track. And then we'll go through each of our guests. Thank you, Kit.
Well, thank you. It's so good to see you again.
Yes.
We connect, throughout, and I did do this just for you. I
was like, whoa, he's gonna have that t-shirt. We're gonna see all those cool tats. Oh, there you go.
Only for weddings do you get this. So
wow. Well, this is good. This is good.
No, that on March the 12th, here in Georgia, our world changed when the governor came on and shut down the schools and said, go to the grocery stores and get a month's supply of groceries. And so it was just like, whoa, just in a day. And I was sitting there the next day going, what just happened to my work? Because, you know, throughout my career, it's been live audiences. It's always large audiences, small ones, face to face. It's all about energy and connection. And to be quite honest, I have not leveraged technology like a lot of wonderful people have. I blast a lot and I stay visible, but really I'm out there. I like being out, you know, boots on the ground. So when this happened, all of a sudden, you know, the places where I do my thing, which is prisons, couldn't get into prisons anymore. Schools shut down. Corporate, they ain't looking for motivational speakers and they're not even getting together, you know, not the way that we do it. And churches stopped meeting. So all of a sudden I'm in this virtual world, which, you know, I mean, yeah, I use it, but it hasn't been the way that I do my thing. So that was a real challenge for me because it brings fear. Okay. And where there's fear, you know, obviously we can go a lot of directions with that. When we get afraid and turn it, you know, for me, fear produces anger. So I tell people that are around me, that love me, whatever, if you ever see me get angry, ask me what I'm afraid of. Because, you know, I'm going to go up into that energy that's higher. But a lot of people, they don't do that. They turn it inward, which can become depression. But there's a lot of anxiety in the unknown. And so everybody deals with that on some level. But right now, it's really been ratcheted up. Fear of the unknown. You know, we don't have any reference. This is interesting because it's the first time that we can't look at a young person and say, all right, here's how you get through this. We've been here before. Learn from your history. We never have. Not in this new world. And so I had to get creative and get behind, you know, this technology to continue connecting with people. But I've had to go deep. And so one of the things I did emotionally for me is I was laying in there, my wife was laying there watching a little TV, and I'm in my head and I'm like, what do you want me to do? I mean, how am I supposed to keep this thing moving? And I rely on grants, donors, sponsors, and speaking fees. Okay, so and I was just like, what do you want me to do? And it was a clear answer. And it was, I want you to care more about humanity than you do about how you're going to get your needs met. And the idea was, I want you to start speaking on Facebook Live every morning for the next 40 days. And so I launched this thing and I'm like, I called it 40 sermons in 40 days. And literally 40 days in a row, I got up early and I prepared and I went and delivered about a 30-minute message, you know, live. And then I had this growing group. But people were like, man, thank you for doing this. You know, it's going to help us get through the quarantine. And I'm like, I'm doing this for me because I got to stay sharp. Because right now, if I give in to this fear and anxiety and then I start getting kind of down about it, I'm going to be shut down. I'm not going to be able to do what I'm put on the plan to do. So I had to do something radical. And so that's basically kind of I hope that answers a little bit. And I know it's not getting in the specifics of the mental health and things, but that's kind of an overview.
Well, you know, that's really what we wanted to hear, Kit, is here you are, an international speaker, and you just shared all of your vulnerabilities, all of your anxiety, and what you had to do to get up in the morning and get through this giant cow pie. And so I appreciate your honesty and your new shirt. I do like that. So,
now, if I could add one more thing. So we started the day with, you know, bringing the message, and you get what you give. I know you're a big believer in that. What you put out in the universe, it come right back at you. The other thing that my wife and I did, we said, all right, 7 o'clock, phones off, and we can't talk about drama. No pandemic, no task force, boom, shut off. And then we had a plan every night, and we still do, game night, date night, massage night, out on the deck night, you know, movie night. And so we were very intentional about our time, and we protected it. And the pandemic was a beautiful time of growth in our relationship. And, you know, so we set real healthy boundaries there to protect our minds.
Oh, that's great. Thanks. And now we're going to go to Joeann, who is in Tucson, Arizona. And Joeann is the party. Okay, the fun begins. And I met Joeann in 2009 online, and she was sharing Farmville in Facebook, and we were all just learning social media, and we decided probably Farmville wasn't what we needed to be doing, but we were learning together. And we were, I lived in Williams, Arizona. We met in real time in Phoenix, and then ultimately ended up working on a crowdsourced ebook called Cosmic Shift Happens, based on some serious things that happened in social media, learning how to navigate those cow pies and get the anxiety out of dealing with that. And Joeann has been the owner and the CEO, Chief Evolution Officer of Advantage Solutions Group since 1993, and she's helped hundreds of individuals and companies increase their bottom line and personal effectiveness. She's been an instructor in leadership positions for the Arizona Association of Realtors, Women's Council of Realtors, and National Association of Realtors. And Joeann was chosen the 1999, that's another century before. But she was the best interpersonal communication trainer in the country. So we are honored to have you, especially when your mission says to support the frazzled, unfocused, and time challenged. And her vision is to ignite joy, creativity, and love. She can help you relax and produce remarkable results. Joeann currently writes for a travel magazine, and she shares her adventures all over the world. You'll be able to find her on joannsview.com. And Joeann, I'm just really excited to hear how you helped all these people get through all this stuff. Okay. Oops.
Well, it's definitely been crazy times, and I'm so excited, Carra, to be with you and Kit and Shae today, because I really think having a conversation, just like Kit said, about when you're angry or fearful, you need to look a little bit deeper and see what's going on there. So as you introduced me, I've really transitioned from all of the work I've done speaking nationally, teaching, and real estate 2 years ago in January to say I was retired. And of course, as my husband said, that was an impossibility. And I think he's glad that I've taken some energy in a different direction, which has been with my travel writing. And that's been just, we love to travel. And so being able to have a blog and share about the places that we go and we love with other people has been a lot of fun. But I kept my coaching practice because I absolutely adore working with the wonderful clients that I have one-on-one. And so I have a limited amount of people, and in what's happened, it was my concern right off that the real estate business was going to be non-existent. And, you know, here I'm supposed to be their coach, and what are they going to do? Interestingly, first of all, it didn't change things for us that much. Because I had transitioned and was working from home, we were home. What it did change was we canceled all of the travel we had for the rest of the year. And from that, I think I've really had a chance to do a lot of reassessing. My husband is going to be 76 in 2 weeks. I was 72 this year. And so we're at a place in our lives where we already were saying we're not going to live forever. But this made it even, and I think we'll talk a little bit about this as we talk about some of the things we're going to touch on today. But looking at the reality of us being mortal, of us passing on and seeing. And I think for a lot of us, it's always, you know, kind of that bucket list. What do you want to do between now and when you die? And with my coaching clients, I've always kind of come from that place. Like, it's not about you wait till you retire and then you're able to do things, but that you live your life out of your values, like Kit was talking about. What have you been put on earth to do? What do you do better than anybody else? So over the months, as I've worked with coaching clients, we have had days that fear and everything was the thing we had to address first, you know. And again, I think we'll talk a little bit more about focusing and planning and all of that kind of thing in the next few minutes. But the reminder that we each have today and how important living 100% today is a place to come back to. It's a place that I ground myself in and have tried to help the people I work with ground themselves in kind of shifting from doing to being. And I think a lot of people have gone through that shift in the last 3 months, because just as Kit was talking about all the things you do being taken away, then what? And so the being part of it maybe is something that many of us have not gone real deeply in. We're kind of like the hamster on the hamster wheel. And when the wheel gets taken away, it's like, now what? So that's what I've seen, Carra, for myself and for the people I've been working with, that has been maybe the most impactful, is the reassessing. How do I really want my life to look? How do I want the rest of my life to look? And is what I'm doing aligned with that?
Oh, Joann, that's awesome. I think it's fun to, well, fun. It's helpful to realize that everyone has had some kind of anxiety, no matter what your age range is and no matter what you do. And part of the problem is what you identified there, Joann, is that you're on such a hamster wheel, you never stop to really think about who you are. And so now we've had 3 months to figure that out. And sometimes it's not really a happy place, because maybe you haven't really been who you thought you would be. So now we're going to have a wonderful opportunity to hear from a millennial who just spent a 1-year discipleship in Eureka, California, and learning a different way to cope. And she was right in March. She just got back in May, but in March it took place. And so this is Shae Riley, my daughter. And Shae, how has this touched you and what you're doing and your friends?
Well, you know, I think it has afforded each of us, if we will choose to look at it as an opportunity to, like both Kit and Joann and you, Mom, have all said, it's an opportunity to sort of reassess how you were living, what you were doing every day, and what matters. And it sort of forced all of us to slow down. And we were all, well, I had a unique opportunity for the last year, but most everybody is on the hamster wheel 24/7, 365. And this has forced us to pump the brakes. There's no way around it. And so I think if each person can choose to look at it as an opportunity to figure some things out as they are slowed down and not just be angry and afraid, I think it's an opportunity to figure some things out within each one of us. I had a very different experience from most people, because for all of COVID up until the end of May, I was completely off the grid. For a year, I didn't have a phone or a computer or a television or anything. And so it was very strange to come back from that year-long journey that I was on to the world that we live in now, because it is not the world that I left last May. And I feel like it perfectly prepared me to sort of deal with all of the things that are coming up. But that's unique to my experience. As you referenced my age, I have a lot of friends that are supposed to be getting married in the last 6 months and have had to change all of their plans. And some people save for years to have the big party that they want to include their whole families in, and all these babies being born, and you can't go to the hospital. So it's my friends have had a lot of disappointment in the last handful of months. The only disappointment that I can reference is just I haven't had a haircut since February, which is unfortunate. But I mean, I'm just choosing to look at it as an opportunity to slow down instead of let the fear and the anxiety and the disappointment take over. I think it's what we focus on expands, right? So I'm a firm believer that it's all gonna, the negative and the fear, that's gonna breed more negativity and more fear. And we each get to decide where we exist and if you want to exist in that space.
Well, thanks, Shae. We all are looking, going, well, look, we're all feeling the same. And I when it first happened, when the announcement that this was really getting gonna be a thing, that I think, let's see, the announcement on Monday, and on Tuesday, I had 2,500,000 crash of deals that were written. And you're just like, oh my gosh. And grandson who's been working with me, I'm like, this is the worst day in real estate ever. We got one day to feel bad, and then we just got to move on, because there is nothing you or I are going to do that are going to figure this out. And so it took about 3 weeks of every day just like getting through the day. I mean, it was really hard just to focus and finish. And but now I'm just really, and I'm grateful that this event, this Zoom event, has come to be, because it's sharing with other people what we went through, what the journey was. Here's the education Kit was talking about. We haven't had anything to go back on that helps us navigate through these cow pies, but now we do. It's like, yes, everybody's feeling the same way, and then we're going to have to imagine what is tomorrow or next week going to look at, and Kit has some fun ideas on that. But let's go right to the questions that we had outlined in the event. And Kit, we'll start with you on what do you have in your toolbox that can help people focus better? Because it seems so much distraction, so many different news sources and people and their fear. What tools do you think would be helpful for people to implement?
Yeah, so far so good. And Shae, that was impressive. You've done well, Miss Carra. You raised up a little soldier right there.
Oh, she has taught me so much. Let me tell you, she teaches me something every day.
I can hear you coming out of it though. What we focus on, expand. I mean, she's just kind of throwing. I'm like, Carra, look at you.
That's true.
What I did, I don't remember, is a number of years ago, is I started creating. What I do is I create things that help me. And then if it becomes very effective, then I, begin to include them in teaching, and because I teach through experience, I've studied a lot, still do, but it's really experience, I think, that is the most powerful teacher. And so I created a character called Uncle G, and Uncle G is what I call the brain. I think I started in schools because I wanted to teach the kids just some basics about the brain and how they have so much more control than they think they do. And then I started teaching everywhere, in the prisons or in churches or corporate. It became this thing. So Uncle G, I created a character to remind myself that I'm not him and he's not me. He's an organ that's sophisticated. I mean, it's like, wow, so complex and infinitely, maybe creative. And so I'm not my brain any more than my liver, my kidney, or my heart. It's an organ, right? So it's there for me to use. And the reason I chose Uncle G is because he's the original Google. You ask good questions, you get good answers. He's got 2 million years of universal code in our DNA. He knows the things and we don't ask him. And so I'm like, okay, he's the original Google. He can find me what I need to know. And then I'm like, he's the original GPS. You know, you plug in the right destination, the better the destination, more specific, just follow the voice. And that's what we do with the lady on the box. And so I started incorporating that. It's like, man, I gotta plug in the right destination and then just follow the voice. And then I started teaching how he's a storyteller and he's a learning machine and he's a chemist and a junkie. Okay, so you got a very interesting, so I brought in the three amigos, serotonin and dopamine and adrenaline, and made characters out of them. But basically what I'm saying is this: if he's a learning machine, then basically he doesn't come up with original stuff. He's not a brain. I mean, he is a brain. He doesn't have one. You know, he's basically taking the information and the content that we give him and he's filing it away. And the ones that are the most, you know, redundant and replicated and repeated, he builds habits around that. And then when it gets to be a well-grained habit, pushes it down into the subconscious where you live. That's what drives us. And so right now, the pandemic shows up and the content that we were getting through Fox or CNN or Facebook or Twitter, however you get your news, it was amplified exponentially because it was all day, every day, one thing. And we're counting numbers and we're looking at percentages and we're trying to figure out risk and, you know, quarantine shut down. And then all of a sudden, you know, the brain is going, Uncle G is going to create stories around the information. Well, now he had a lot of new stories. You tell the same story over and over in the head long enough, it becomes a belief for you. It doesn't mean it's right. It just means that, hey, that's the story I've accepted to be true. And so I put all that together and it's like, dang, he's learning a lot of new stuff. So coming out of the quarantine, all of us were going to have some new habits that he has constructed. They're either going to serve me or they're going to compete against me and try to, you know, Uncle G is going to hold on to habits because he's a survival machine. He wasn't built to make us happy. He's built to keep us alive. So whatever you give him the most, he is going to hold on to real tight. And it's hard to break a habit. So I started, you know, teaching, you've got to monitor what information that you get. Don't let the world program your brain and then your brain run you, you know, by the voice in the head. And so I got very deliberate, and I'll wrap with this and we can go on, but to focus is a practice. I mean, Uncle G's got to do something over and over, and whatever he does a lot, he does very well. Well, right now we're all seeing glimpses of ADHD and depression and some mania and obsessive compulsion. We're getting little tastes of what people clinically are dealing with all the time. The voice in the head's loud. And so I don't look at social media other than to post and respond to people that are, you know, consuming my content. I don't play video games. I never have. I don't watch the news. I read it so I can read on both sides. What I focus on what I believe I need to focus on, and it becomes a habit, and that protects my mind. And then I can deliberately choose from YouTube or documentaries or however I consume my content to actively program Uncle G with the stories I want him to tell. And then when he's telling a story that doesn't serve me, quarantine, delete, replace, you know, with something. So it ain't easy. It's a day by day, hour by hour. Sometimes it's every 5 minutes having to tell him to shut up and start getting him to speak my language. That was like a fun and
Thank you, Kit. That is definitely helpful, and it really is what you manifest is what you believe. So it's like believe in the positive and the moving forward and identifying rather than what you're consuming that might not be real news.
Which is it can't be lazy, because lazy is I'll consume whatever anybody's putting out on Facebook. I'm gonna scroll everybody's content and whatever gets my attention, you know. Same with news. I just see what they have, and we're not deliberate. But if we become intentional, like I've got to plan for the content I'm gonna consume today.
That's good.
I've got to time block the things that I need to do today, and I've got to be able to say no to anything I make sure I know what's going on in the world, but I'll be danged if I'm going to let those talking heads create stories in my head.
It's mindfulness about and what you're doing, your intention of what you're letting in. You're standing porter at that door of thought, and who's going to get in there?
Science in hell. Look at you, science in hell.
So, okay, Miss Joann, what tools do you have to help us focus?
Well, first, I just want to say kids totally inspired me. I was like, yeah, love it. Because just like you said, Carra, that mindfulness is our most important tool right now. And creating those habits of how we want things to look like. I just read a book by James Clear called Atomic Habits. I don't just throw that out as a resource now. Atomic Habits. And I loved thinking about what stories do I have and which ones don't serve me anymore. Kit said that because I think we're so used to the past and the stories that have served us are winning formula, what got us here in the first place, and it all worked. But the shift that we're seeing right now is so catastrophic to that working next time or working for the future. So when I come to focus, one of the things, and Shae said this, what you focus on expands. So I'm always listening for myself, and when I'm talking to clients about what are you focusing on? And is that really what you want more of? And if it's not, how can I change the story? Because just as we've talked a little bit so far about the thoughts you have actually creating much of what gives you opportunity or problems, this seeing what you can do from where you are so that you're able then to be in possibility. One of the habits I have that I use with my clients is asking them in the morning to look at what their 3 priorities are for the day. Not necessarily the loudest to-dos or trying to get the most amount of things done on the to-do list. Again, Kit said saying no is so important right now. So what are you saying yes to? And with those top 3 priorities, what in your future would have the biggest impact payoff if you took action on that today? And it doesn't have to be the biggest action. It might be one piece, because for most of us, there's, like you said, Carra, so many things that can distract us and that we can focus on. So to break it down into what's just the next step on something that's really, really important to me. What has the biggest payoff?
That's great, Joann. Thank you so much.
You know, I have one more thing. Can I jump? Okay, so I'm looking at my notes. So nice to have notes sometimes.
Yes.
The other focus tool I use is meditation. And I may mention this again, but I start every day with a 15 to 20 minute meditation, and I've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now. The centeredness I'm able to take from that into the rest of the day has been a tool that I don't know I could ever do without now. But and some people it's prayer, for some people it's visualization of what they want for the future. But the grounding myself first thing in the morning before I choose those 3 priorities really comes from a place then of not having the swirl around me.
That's great, Joann. Thank you so much. The swirl, yes, that's the epicenter there. So, Shae, now do you have some things that you've been working on that help with focus?
Well, I think that both Kit and Joann hit the nail on the head. I mean, everything that both of them said is what has helped me lately. And just to be really mindful of thinking about what you're thinking about. And when you realize that you're thinking about something that's
I think, Joanne, we had the, I think she got
froze instead of mine.
Okay, you'll have to come back in on your phone. It's because you froze, so she'll come back in. But
there she is.
Oh, there she is. Okay, great.
Got to unmute. She's muted.
Okay, unmute. Okay, there we go.
Internet, right? Can you hear me?
We can. We can.
Oh, okay.
See,
I'm so
it's the
sorry.
gremlins. They no longer give
Yeah.
me a pit in my stomach. It
Yeah.
just happens.
What can you do?
What can you do?
But just being really aware of what you're thinking about and the thoughts that you are allowing to come into your space and into your soul, and just taking them captive immediately. If it's causing you to experience fear and anxiety and all these things that none of us want to experience, you got to take it captive and replace it with something that causes none of that. So I think having a go-to, and I realize that everyone's getting centered is going to be different. Mine's prayer, but I mean, if you start your day there, I think it can usually only get better. It's a good place to start for me, and ask, okay, I ask God every day, what do you have for me today? And it could be, and it's going to be different every day. Like, how are you going to use me today? How can I make a difference? How can I, create change in my own space and be some sort of a light in all of the craziness. And I think I've experienced that when you're more intentional about thinking about good, it also snowballs in the same way that the negative thoughts will take over and snowball and breed more negative thoughts. The positive ones do the same. So I think being really aware of thinking about what I'm thinking about and starting my day, asking, what good is out there that I can do and use me as a tool for today.
Well, thanks, Shae. That was great. And so I'll end up here on this question of cow tip number 1 is to celebrate one task a day, just one, because many of you who are listening, are out there always trying to improve, trying to find something that will help you, and really just being happy that you completed one task today. And I think it helps too, as I work with people who are aging in transition. It's like, it's okay. One, it's just okay. And I'd like to read you what Andy 2020 said: need to give news a time out of control, the mindset. So again, to focus, keep that external news stuff out of your wheelhouse. So, okay. So now, Kit, the next question that we're going to investigate here is, how do you plan with so much unknown? How do we, get through? What are you doing next week? What are you doing next month?
Right. Yeah, these are great questions. I think that I know when I get stuck in my head and start, kind of seeing the wind and the waves and not staying, in my source, that's when things get kind of crazy. And, we just like, man, I can't think about the future. I just got to worry about right now. But I think that, there's incredible power in a dream. And, Albert Einstein said, imagination is more important than knowledge. And he said, I'm passionately curious. That was the answer to his what's your greatest gift? I'm passionately curious. He said, I want to know God's thoughts. The rest are just details, right? And if he had a problem, he would ask the question, if I was God, how would I do? And so this amazing man used his imagination to solve problems that baffled scientists. And the guy wasn't even a scientist. They weren't even recognizing it, right? So say all that to say, now more than ever, not when things are really going good, focus on your dreams. No, when the storms arrive, the dream is so much more important. And we teach this to the kids. It's, you show me a kid with a big dream, and on Friday night when he's tempted, he's going to have a better chance of saying no because he's got something to protect. If he's got no dream, you got nothing to protect. And then it's like anything bright and shiny gets your attention. And so this is called the power of a dream. So what I believe, and I'm trying to teach what I live and has worked for me, the bigger my dream, the stronger the pull through storms, distractions, temptations, obstacles, failures, haters. The bigger the dream, that Dr. King had a dream so big that they couldn't shut him up until they had to kill him, and that didn't shut him up either, because a white guy 50 years later is preaching his words. You know what I'm saying? You kill the dreamer, you can't kill the dream. But his dream was so big that it pulled him past even self-preservation. And so there's a lot of people right now, God bless them, that are caught up in the midst of the storm, and they're focused on all the things that scare them: panic, dread, worry, fear. That's their focus. Their brain is creating habits around it. And so even when the pandemic, moves on, and maybe we figure some things out on these other issues, that now we've created habits of worry. Worry is a habit. It's a practice, right? It's not natural. It's a practice, and it becomes a habit. Or negativity, be careful, because it becomes a habit. And right now people are practicing who they're going to be tomorrow. And so if I've got a dream that's so big, well, now all I got to do is protect it. I call those from the dream killers. And then we figure out what are the dream killers that can threaten that dream. And that's what you've got to protect, because we protect what is valuable. So right now, say all that to say, in the middle of a pandemic, I've never been through it, in the middle of people choosing sides and labels like crazy and division, now my dream has to become even bigger. Like, man, my work just got more important. My voice just got more crucial. But if I don't plan for the future and I just try to figure out today, I'm going to lose myself in it. So I think now is a time for dreamers. I mean, we've got to be dreaming, and we've got to be preparing as we move forward and we learn from these things. But the problem is, and I just want to say, I don't know if we get this or not, but for anybody that's listening, it's very hard for somebody that's in the midst of a mental illness, whether it's depression or anxiety. And I'm talking about it gets to a clinical point. For people, me or anybody, just say, here, just think good thoughts, just motivate yourself, just come up with a to-do list. And it's maddening for somebody that's caught in real depression, because they'll get mad and say, you don't understand, I can't think positive right now. I can't start anything. I can't finish anything. And this is such an isolating thing, this mental illness, that when we need people in our lives, that's when we want to withdraw. And the pandemic and the quarantine, oh my gosh, it poured gas on the flame of people that are dealing with these issues, because now they're even more isolated and people don't know what to say. So The dream is the power for me.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Kit. And I think that's true in those who are listening, and that when you are dealing with an underlying illness, mental illness, that this can be the catalyst to something bad. So you need to get some help, and that's one of our next questions, and somebody to be able to talk with and work through it. So Joann, what do you have to help us thinking about the future?
Well, as a coach, one of the things usually I hold people accountable for and work with them on is their yearly plan and their quarterly plan and all the rest of that. And so it's been very, very interesting. And we've shifted to not letting go of that. Like Kit said, looking at what is your dream, that may be what are your plans for the future, but coalescing them a little bit differently, so they're more connected with your values and with what's really, really important to you. I've kind of had to talk down some of my clients, sort of like what you were saying, Kit. And I had a discussion with my daughter about another family member who's manic depressive. And I was saying if he would just meditate. And she said, Mother, when you're going to have somebody tell you to meditate just doesn't work. So Kit, I really relate to what you said. And in talking with these clients, it's let's take a deep breath and look at what's important this week. So you're holding both places. You're holding the future still as an important thing to have your heart looking at, but for the physicalness of what you're going through each day, what you said, Carra, about maybe there just being one thing. You know, let's just look at today. And for the most part, for everybody I've talked to, today has been okay. We've been blessed and lucky that we haven't had anyone close to us get sick and die. And I know that's not true for now thousands and thousands of people. So I don't want to diminish that is happening, and that may be what the focus needs to be on for that person for right now. But I'm focusing on the gratitude that you have for what you do have, what is working, what you can do. And even Carra, though you said about the worst day in real estate, in working with my clients over these 3 months, some of them are having their best quarters ever. People still need to buy and sell. And for us to be able to help them and be the calm, be the support, I think is a really valuable shift for us to make. It's not about selling them a house or listing their house. It's about supporting them so they can go to what their dream is, what's next.
Oh, that's great, Joanne. And well, like I said, on that one day, because my grandson is 21, that was not a good day for him. I told him just one day, that's it. We can have our pity party for one day, but that's going to be about it. So Shae, do you have some tips for us here? I think you're, there you go.
I think that thinking too far in the future can be a little bit dangerous. And I think thinking too much about the current climate that we're in can also be dangerous. So I think each person sort of has to find a safe space for their own thoughts and for their own plans for their day. I think I'm in recovery, and so I'm a big proponent of one day at a time, right? So a little bit is a good amount to focus on, I think, at this point. So I think that deciding what today looks like for you is a great place to start. And like both Kit and Joann said, that this is serious. And for people that are struggling with addictions and mental health, like this is it's scary. It's a scary place to be. And just telling someone to think positive and that's going to fix it that's in no way meant to sound callous or careless. It's just finding what's going to help each person is going to look different, I guess. And for me personally, I think thinking about one day at a time makes a lot of sense right now. And also holding on to the fact that this too will pass. It might not pass and look the same as it did before it began, but it's not, I don't think, going to be this bad forever. So holding on to the hope that it is going to pass and that you can still make plans and go do things with the people that you love. And that ultimately these kinds of struggles and these kinds of trials that we walk through, they refine us. So focusing on not maybe resenting the struggle, which was really hard for me to come to that place. So I know that it's not easier. It's much easier said than done. But looking at each day and say, yeah, well, what can I do today that may help plan for something in the future, and live happy today.
Oh, that's great, Shae. Thank you very much. And just so proud of Shae. And I'm going to share her big picture. She'll be working on her master's to help people with addiction, having been through it and gone through the recovery. And so we're really excited about that future there, and how it's working, and how it's helping her family be better. So that's good. So I think we're going to skip down here to a question that nobody likes to talk about, the final transition, but most of us are probably going to make that a step at some point. So for me, in what I'm doing in navigating these cow pies, is trying to make it fun and say, you know, let's work on it now. Let's figure out what our plans are before something scary comes up. So what we're going to talk about is the 5 important documents, and actually discussing with people, your heirs or your family, how is it we're going to handle this? Because, I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people that are dying, and did they have all their plans ready? And how can we help? And in one thing that you're taking out of today, out of this event, is maybe on your to-do list to say, I need to call that estate planner and get my will taken care of. But Kit, you have in your work been working with death row inmates. So you had to deal with death all the time. So let's hear some of the things that you might have to share with people dealing with COVID issues.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die. You know, it's like, you know, it's kind of like a lot of what we're talking about. There's this cognitive dissonance. We say we believe this, but we behave this way. It's like, which one's going to change? You're going to change the behavior or the belief, but you got conflict going on there. And so, yeah, I think that in maybe a positive way, the whole world has been doing a lot of this, you know, before we jumped on board. You know, some of the desperate places that I bet we've all been or visited or at least seen, they understand suffering. I think it's come home to a lot of us. But it's always been fascinating to me. And one of the people I love to study about was George Harrison. I don't know if anybody has really looked at the life of George. But in the kind of the second half of his shortened life, he was fascinated with what comes next. And those that loved him the most was he lived every day. And this is a Native American thing too, is we're preparing for an honorable death. And so, you know, his whole life was about preparing for the moment when he was going to transition, and he wanted it to be a beautiful, peaceful time for him to go into this next thing. And so I look at not just my faith, because I really, really know what the book says, you know, but I've also studied I study all the faith traditions, and I'm interested. And then I studied the near-death experience, and I'm fascinated. And then I studied the great yogis, you know, Tibetan yogis, and, you know, the Book of the Dead, and how they look at the transition to try to get my spirit in a place where it's, you know, calm and peaceful with whenever that comes. And I had this epiphany with, you know, I mean, I'm an open book. I write about and speak about pretty much a lot of things that, you know, maybe people don't on stage a lot of times. But Shae, you and I have that thing, and you know, we're brother and sister now. I see you. And so, but it was like my dad, he left the planet in a very bad way, and it messed me up for a lot of years. You know, I've had a 30-year journey making peace with my father. You know, I was young. I mean, I was in college, but it was this disease and then some other things that he ended his life. And so that was this, wow, you know, because that's the opposite of what we're talking about here. And we're living in an age where, golly, suicide is a real option for a lot of people, especially the young. You know, when they hit their first major storm in their 20s, that's an option because they all know some people who have done it and have seen, well, that wasn't the case for me. You know what I'm saying? It was, I didn't think about it, but it became the case for me when it hit close to home, you know? And so my son and my daughter, 24 and 21, that are caught up right in the midst of this thing, when I work with young people, man, the mid 20s are treacherous for this young generation because they're meeting failure and they're considering, you know, self-harm and these things. And I thought, you know, maybe my gift to my kids is not just to show them how to live, but show them how to die. Maybe I'm supposed to live my life in a way to where I show them not to be afraid and to have an honorable passing and make it mean something and have a legacy to leave behind so that those coming after you have an example of someone that exited in a wonderful way. So it's not so scary. And so, I mean, I went pretty deep down that rabbit hole, but you know, so I look at it,
here, buddy.
I'm fascinated with it. I don't long for it, but I think there was a time in my life where I was pretty reckless, man. I was, you know, I've worked, on death row. I worked with cartel guys. You know, I've worked with every kind of gang. I mean, I've worked with very unstable people in very dangerous places. And for a while there, I got so on the edge that I welcomed it. I was like, man, give me an honorable death. So, I mean, that was I was way too close to it. And so now it's really just making peace. And I'll leave this question with this, but I saw a brother I've lost 3 friends on death row. And 2 of them, I have pictures hanging in my office. This is my little studio. And so I've got reminders of my brothers that have met that end. And I saw one that was a young man when he went in. It takes about 20 years to kill somebody because you get several appeals. And how he came in and when he left was the most amazing thing. Because I was doing a speech that night at 7 o'clock. I had to deliver a speech. And as I was starting my speech, I knew that my friend was dying. And it was such a powerful moment. And here's what they told me. They said the warden walked in and he was on the gurney. And, you know, this is a time where a lot of them say something or it's a statement or they freak out or they whatever. And you've got people viewing through the glass when they open the curtains. And he looked and the warden came in. The warden was very, very, very serious. It was heavy. And my friend, he looked at him, he said, it's going to be okay. He encouraged the warden, you know, before he passed. And he died in peace. And they said, do you have any last words? And he just said, you know, I just commit myself to my Lord, you know, and I was like, wow, that was powerful. So he made peace with death when he knew it was coming. And so I want to prepare for that, you know, it's going to come.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. And I think that you're right to have, while there isn't an issue, to be preparing for what eventually will happen. It just brings peace and happiness for everybody because you're afraid to talk about it. Some families are, but it's like, this will happen, but here's how we're going to make it okay for you. So, okay, Miss Joann, what do you have to share with us here?
Wow. I just got totally into Kit's presentation there. And really nothing beyond what Kit said, I think needs saying for me. I've lived my life and I'm so grateful to have been able to do it the way I wanted to do it. And, you know, kind of been a rebel and a hippie and an entrepreneur, and luckily not gotten drawn into negativity of addiction or other things along the way. So, you know, every day I kind of look at, if this was the last day, I've done and touched people and taken care of my own wishes to support and help, that I feel that if it's my time, it's my time. So you know, one of the things we talked about, Carra, that I think is really important, and I don't know how we're going to, because I know we're getting close to the end of our time, but the 5 documents that people want, and just kind of going back to what you were talking about being ready. My stepdaughter was here earlier in the year sharing that her mother has 22 horses, and that she said, it just makes me crazy, because if something happens to her, what am I supposed to do with the 22 horses? And I know most of us don't have 22 horses, but we have a lot of other loose ends that those 5 documents can help us bring together, and not to put that off if it's something that hasn't been done, so that you're giving a gift to your family members and allowing them to first know your wishes. You need to talk about it with them, but secondly, to have in place the paperwork that if we died today or tomorrow or the next day, would help that whole transition.
Well, thanks, Joann. And has your stepdaughter actually asked her mother what she wants to do? She has?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, good, because that's really what it's about, the communication skills. So what do you want me to do with this? So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So Shae, I don't know, do you have some words of wisdom for us here?
You know, I think that Kit said everything that I could have wanted to say about the whole dying aspect of human life. And the only thing that I can think that might be helpful is that maybe this opportunity that you know, life has slowed down, it might be a time for each one of us to be able to look at and decide for ourselves, was I previously, and am I currently in this slowed down pace, living a life that I would be proud to leave and, you know, go on to my next destination, whatever everyone believes in. But am I living a life that's worthy of, you know, something I can be proud of, and something that maybe God, in my case, would be proud of. And so and I don't know that everyone would say, yeah, absolutely, I was, and I am, and I'm just doing great. And because, I mean, really, when you think about it, there's always room for improvement in every single person's life. And so maybe this whole situation can cause us to pause and say, like, what was working and what wasn't, and what am I maybe not super proud of that I could do differently, so that when that day comes, and it will come for every one of us, that it's a peaceful and you know, not totally sad time when you get back to look back at your life.
So, well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks, all of you. We are coming up again with our time, and I think it was important to kind of end with that. I know when I work with people in the transition end of things, it can be 3 or 4 years before they get these documents, and that would be a will, a power of attorney that is for your finances, a health power of attorney. All of these things need to be taken care of. So if you can leave with one thing to put on your to-do list, that would be it. And but first and foremost, just as we've navigated through this, to stay connected with those that you love. And it's okay to disconnect from those who cause you anxiety. And if you needed permission, there it is. So it's like, because it really, you know, if it is causing you internal issues, that which then can relate to physical issues and mental issues, you let it go. Let it go. And this is a good time to do that. And it's a good time to be journaling your experience, because who knows, this might be the most telling chapter of your life, as you're having time to be thinking about things and really what your legacy is, and how you're going to go and be different, because we will all be different from what we were because we've had more time. And what we do with that time, that's another question. So I want to thank Kit and Georgia from Marietta, Georgia today. I mean, what I'd like to do is I'll stop the recording, and then if you guys can stay on a little bit longer, this will be great because I'd really like to hear about that. But those who need to go, we've done. And thank you, Joeann from Tucson. This was just, I don't know, it made me feel good just to hear everybody talking from their own point of view, that it's like, it's okay and we will get through this. So thank you for—
Thanks, Shae.
What's that? What's that?
I said we need to thank Shae too.
And Shae, yes, of course, Shae. Yes, there she is. Yes, baby Shae.
And you,
she
Carra.
every single day. I mean, I'll send her a text, boy, you know what you taught me today? So, and just voicing those changes and being there for the people, because I mean, this really is a time that these issues are coming to the surface. Some people may be talking about them and some people may not. So if we're there, we appreciate everyone. And again, if Joeann and Kit, you can stay a little while, but otherwise we'll sign off, and we will appreciate you coming to the Cosmic Cow Pie and connecting all these transition dots, and we'll keep you posted as we have more events. And thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you, Carra.